A very warm welcome on Newsline Mediaverse. I'm Karthikeya Sharma and you are watching a special edition of G20. G20 is taking place at a cusp of a number of global developments. The world is witnessing American nativism. The world is witnessing European protectionism. The world is witnessing a Russian war. Our world is witnessing Chinese unilateralism and territorial expansionism. And our world is witnessing a UK which is post-Brexit. And in midst of all, we are piloting G20. We have made it a sort of a festival, which our foreign minister very correctly pointed out, was more like Jan Bhagidari, more in the spirit of the way Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, has done a number of campaigns. But most important of all, it has to do with what it brings to the table. How are we going to renegotiate multilateralism? Is it our first time real investment into a multilateral forum? How are we going to make globalization more equitable, transparent, less opaque? From development of women to development led by women. As Prime Minister very rightly said in today's editorial, a wonderful piece. Transformative technology is one thing, but it has to be inclusive also. We are in a world where we have to deal with climate change. We are in a world where we will have to deal not only with the potential of AI, but we will have to deal with the disruption which AI brings to the table. And we are at a world where Prime Minister from 2014 has been talking about reforming institutions. And I'll start this conversation with a number of experts and top diplomats. I was at the house of late Arun Jaitley, and I was in the 5th batch of journalists the Prime Minister met. A lot of journalists were asking Prime Minister a lot of things. Why can't we go with you? Why can't we travel with you? What will you do? What's your agenda? So Prime Minister said, you need to really ask me right questions. So all of us were taken aback. That was supposed to be a sort of a conversation before the dinner. So Mr. Jaitley, late Arun Jaitley, was slightly pensive. And he said, you asked me the right questions. You asked me, when will India find its place in United Nations? You asked me, what are we doing to break this monotony and the structural domination of the Bretton Woods institutions? You have to ask me of the Global South, and sir, I'm talking about 2014-15. Now, I'm going to go to Mr. Ashok Sajjanar. Sir, is it correct for me to say that G22 is a great occasion and a personal initiative on part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to renegotiate what global multilateralism stands for today?
I think you're very right. First of all, I must compliment you. When you have narrated all the challenges that the world confronts today, that is the situation today. And unfortunately, the situation also is that the multilateral institutions that were created, they have all failed to deliver. And it is in that context that the importance of G20 has become so very high. It has become so very prominent. Because if these challenges were not there, or if these institutions had been able to resolve those challenges, then G20 would be like any other global institution. And that is why I think the fact that India is has taken over the presidency of that, because India today enjoys credibility. India today enjoys trust, not only for the fact that its economy has done so well. Over the last 9 years, from the 10th economy, we become the 5th largest economy. We are going to become the 3rd largest economy very, very soon. But also these challenges that have come, for instance, COVID. There were apocalyptic predictions that India is going to see 50 million, 60 million deaths as a result of COVID, because our healthcare system is so fragile. But we have come out literally smelling of roses as a result of that. Not only have we been able to control that, we've been able to create our own vaccines and supply those vaccines, more than 300 million of them to 100. So the point I'm making is that challenges are there, and as the IMF and the World Bank says, India is the only bright spot and the only hope in this very gloomy and dark environment that we see around. And it is in that context that Prime Minister Modi and India, we are developing, we are creating, we are presenting a new narrative of a human-centric development to the world.
Human-centric, I think I'll go to Manju Seth on this, because when we talk about human-centric development, I recall it's also about Jan Bhagidari. There was a time when Dr. Manmohan Singh went for the Pittsburgh Summit, and when we were there, the entire city was barricaded, and I could see the officers, big officers on the horseback patrolling the city. You don't expect them on the East Coast, maybe in the Austin or Texas, something like that. But then the whole city was closed down. You had protest centers. You had people come out. But this time, if you look at the data, the teachers have come out, students have participated. It's more like a festival. You don't have protests taking place. People have participated on an issue, a very foreign policy one, as if it is their own and domestic. Now, if that is a change on the table, what it brings to the country and what it shows to the world.
Absolutely. This was the very first time, as you rightly said, that there was these G20 meetings were held all over the country, and people even heard. We met so many people said, what is this G20? Now we know what it is. So that was a big, connect created with the people on all the issues facing the world and India. And this G20 Connect, which was created, Jan Bhagidari, as you mentioned, it has become a very, very positive sort of momentum to the whole G20 and to India's march forward. I think that has been a very important element of the whole G20 exercise, and all the other states in the country had a stake in it, had participation in it, and I think showcased India's development to the world as well, because the delegates came from all over the world to attend all these meetings that were held in different places. And so I think that was a very important message given by our Prime Minister also, and by the G20, to showcase India as well, and to see where we are going, and to focus on how we can bring value to the people and to people's lives and to the whole G20.
Is this the reason why the Prime Minister has been talking about, it's okay to talk about GDP, but let's talk about human-centric development? Absolutely. Is that the reason?
Absolutely. Human-centric development is what the focus should be on, not only on the GDP growth. That is an important aspect, but human-centric, women-led development, all these things that this current G20 is focusing on, and this presidency of India's. And as you rightly said initially, also one Earth, one family, one future, for the whole concept of inclusive growth, of the last mile connectivity, last mile digital connectivity is what we've been talking about. And that has made a big impact and will impact the whole outcome of G20.